Welcome to the show designed to give you crypto confidence. Created by the marketing communications specialists at Blocksparks, we want to help you learn about cryptocurrency and blockchain in a safe and friendly place. Because we believe this stuff is far too exciting to leave it to the geeks. Come and join us to learn more. Welcome to the Crypto Confidence Podcast. And here we talk a lot about how the blockchain is tamper-evident and censorship-resistant. But what does this mean for the data it holds? How will we have to rethink the way we share, disclose, and commodify our data, whether that's our personal data or information about things which affect us? With powerful new regulation in Europe last year, including a mandatory right to be forgotten, these are important issues for every consumer to understand and consider. And I'm really pleased today to have with me to discuss this Roxana Nasoi, who is a blockchain entrepreneur and advocate for community and technology. She's currently the CCO at Aimedis and co-host at the Cryptolaw Podcast and the Nothing at Stake podcast. So I'm really looking forward to our chat today. Welcome, Roxana.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So please tell us a little bit about yourself first and your journey into this crazy world of crypto and blockchain.
So it started around 2015. We were just exploring. This is a funny story, actually, but I was part of this. I love telling this story.
Oh, we love stories.
Exactly. I was part of this meetup in Bucharest that used to happen every Thursday because consistency matters, right? Mm-hmm. And we had this really cool format, people pitching their business ideas, like elevator pitches, people offering public speaking feedback, and then the audience asking questions, people at home voting through the live stream what pitch was the best one, and getting an extended interview at the end of the meeting, mentorship sessions, networking sessions. So it was amazing. And at some point, we grew the Facebook page to about 5,000 people.
Wow.
And we started getting blacklisted by Facebook when we were inviting people from the community to join the event for the community, which is absurd. But we started blacklisting us as spammers. So we had to make a decision and try to move the community to a website, a platform.
Mm.
And we were just looking at how cool it was for the fact that you could use the Bitcoin protocol and, there was an option to create like a new coin out of it. We didn't understand much at the time. So we were just looking into these ways in which you could create a coin or something to belong to a community.
Okay.
And but it was very, very tricky to code on the Bitcoin protocol. And the Bitcoin forks are pretty massive and involves the whole community. So it wasn't really feasible at the time. So we went ahead with these membership cards. But that's how it started. That's how several people in my network, and myself included, became aware that there's a thing called Bitcoin, and it's really cool, and it's different, and it could be used for the sake of community.
How fantastic. Yeah. So not just about money, but actually a way of connecting people, building something.
Wanted like a key to give the user access to specific kind of, resources, educational materials, all the things that we could have on a platform for entrepreneurs. And it seemed like the perfect fit, just that we didn't have any idea how to handle the technical part. Like with Ethereum, it's very easy today to create a token, but back then we didn't really want the token. We were very set on Bitcoin, and we had to give it up. But it was a great learning experience, enough so we could, each of us could go their separate ways and understand, how cryptocurrencies work and how the blockchain technology could be used. And gradually, getting into the crowdfunding space, and then failing in the crowdfunding space, and
Learning.
wearing
Learning in the
days and
crowdfunding
learning.
space.
Yeah, yeah, learning. And then we thought, wow, with an ICO, you could raise funds more easily and give people um, something like a digital share into the project, and that's how it started.
Fantastic.
So my official onboarding as a professional and not just someone involved in the space, like a user in the space, but actually a business person in the space in the ICO world started in 2017 when I started helping out a few ICOs with strategy, marketing, community.
And that
And
was when it was all starting to kick off madly, wasn't it?
yeah, and
2017.
that's when I met the guys at Aimedis.
So what does Aimedis do? Tell us a little bit about that.
Aimedis is a health tech platform, so it
Mm-hmm.
connects healthcare professionals with patients, wearable devices, medical IoT, as we call it, wearable devices.
Wow.
Ensures communication between hospital databases and pharma and insurance. Handles not just the medical side, but we're also on the second version. We will create this social spaces, community space for patients to talk about their problems and their daily needs and their daily hacks
Wow.
on specific subjects. Because we realized the emotional and psychological component is pretty much required when you're treating patients, and
Yeah.
often someone who has a medical condition or who has had it since I don't know has had it for like 20 years knows much more than the doctor treating
The
it.
patients are the experts, aren't they?
Yeah,
Very often
yeah.
with managing chronic conditions. It sounds like a really interesting project, and I'd love to talk to you about that another time. I think maybe we need to do an episode about blockchain and health. That's been mulling in my mind for a
There
while.
is so much to
Yeah,
talk about
a
in terms
lot of exciting
of how you
projects
can use
going on.
how you can use emerging technologies to create better healthcare services and a better infrastructure actually for healthcare, because it's a very fragmented industry.
Yeah, but all of that infrastructure, so far as the patient is concerned, is going to be built on data. And that was the thing we wanted to explore today, is where is all this data going? How is it being managed? And what are the ethics behind it? It's been such a strange, the last couple of years, I suppose, there have been so many high-profile scandals. We're now in a post-Cambridge Analytica world, and it's about a year almost since the implementation of the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, which was not just about signing up for email lists, it was about so much more. Given that you're working with really sensitive patient data in the medical space, how do you think that's affected everyday consumers' awareness of personal privacy and data and how it's managed?
Oh, it's exploited. It's
Yeah.
something that the healthcare industry has been exploiting on off nonstop, because these reports, for example, reports on treatments, reports on the drug industry, they generate a lot of money, and they generate not just money, but they generate a tremendous insight into that is basically required. It is the fuel of pharma companies and any kind of service that is consumer oriented, and specifically healthcare thrives on that. As a company in the space, you really need to look at the not just the bigger picture, but also the details. So in this regard, we actually had to slow down with the expansion and just go for maybe 2 countries per year, because you have to get all these certifications. You cannot come up with a service in a country where you're not certified. And different jurisdictions, like US has different certifications, Europe has different certifications, Asia has different certifications. All these certifications, they're not just a piece of paper, but they basically support the fact that you are eligible to offer services in that country and you are compliant with the regulations in that country.
And it sounds like it's still really fragmented. I suppose it's like the regulation of crypto around the world.
It
It's
is.
so
It
new
is.
that it hasn't converged yet. And
In this sense, pain points pain points and brothers in arms.
Yeah. But what about the people whose data is on these medical databases? Do you think people are more cautious now? Are people more aware of their personal data? Have they learned anything?
No, no,
Okay.
I don't think so. Because you look at, I'll give you a brief example with Facebook, for example. Facebook, you create a page on Facebook and it's your page and you've put your money into it to grow it. And the people that liked it are most likely your friends and friends of your friends. So it's kind of connected to you. And even if you just have maybe 200 or 1,000 people, so not a big audience, you want to change the name of the page because you rebranded or you think it's suitable to be a page about the business and not about yourself, they will not let you do it. They will specifically not let you do it. So that means Facebook owns your page. You don't own your page. Although, theoretically speaking, you have rights over it. But
yeah, it's a big reminder where the power is, isn't it? Who owns that content?
The problem is if this happens because people don't take a stand, because people are letting themselves being taken for granted.
Certainly,
and in a way,
Facebook has
this
so
is
much
why
power. It's quite terrifying.
and
I don't think they set out to try and be
after
this powerful. I don't know.
even after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and then the GDPR, even now they still keep your information for a brief period of time. So at least I think it's between 1 and 3 months. They still store your information on their servers. And if you want to delete your Facebook profile, you would need to go back in time and delete every single post and every single picture and every single detail you uploaded on your Facebook profile, because you have absolutely no guarantee that they will completely erase your record.
No. And even if you try to delete your profile, I know that people have tried to delete their profile and then changed their mind and found months later that they could actually reactivate it and all that content was still there, clearly.
Exactly, because they're betting on this idea that people change their mind with cognitive dissonance and having to choose, and this duality we have in our lives with A or B. They know that people can change their minds, so they're betting on that, and they have a huge excuse from the user psychological behavior online. They have this excuse to store the information and keep it, and most of the time it is sensitive information. It's phone numbers and emails and full names and family names
and all that relationship and behavior stuff about it's terrifying.
Relationship, pictures, moods. They exploited the whole Facebook moods. That there was a study. They exploited this and manipulated to make people respond to it. And there's also the birthday dates that are extremely sensitive.
Yes, so, the amount of data set they have is probably the most powerful in the world, more than any state actors or anybody else. It really is quite frightening. But if that's not enough to frighten people, then and if all the repeated breaches aren't enough, and the times that they get caught doing things they shouldn't, even in the last few weeks with this app that was monitoring teenagers' behaviour across their whole device, not just on Facebook. If people won't learn from that, then we obviously need to change the way that we manage data. What do you think is going to happen with blockchain? Is there any hope for the future with the blockchain revolution to make data more ethical?
There is. There is, because first off, data that should be publicly stored will be publicly stored, or can be publicly stored, so that people get access to it. If you think of just the idea of a distributed public ledger, basically anyone can verify if a transaction took place when, between who, meaning between what addresses. Then I'm a bit concerned about the idea of storing data on blockchain, specifically data sensitive data. I think I think blockchain works much better as to store, for example, the way we use it with Aimedis, we store the IPs of people who want to access the patient's data.
Mm-hmm.
So the patient knows at any single time, any given time during the day, if someone is trying to access their data and from which location and why. So that empowers the right management.
Okay, so does the patient then choose if they want to allow that?
Yeah, exactly. The patient has the opportunity to choose if they would want their data to be used by someone else, and it's used by people in the ecosystem. So everything is in house, and we know who the let's say institutions are, and that gives a layer of protection because you have the identity of who is trying to access your data, the location of who is trying to access your data, and the purpose. So then you can determine, okay, they're doing a study on, I don't know, let's say insulin consumption, daily insulin consumption in diabetics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a diabetic, so do I want to participate? Okay, I want to participate because it definitely helps. It has a deeper purpose, higher purpose, helps the community, helps other people like me, and then I also get something in return, like financial or additional freemium services, let's say.
Right.
So it gives me a reason beyond my consciousness, a practical reason why I should engage with that company doing, performing a study, a research. Or I just say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to expose myself. It's my life. It's my medical condition. I don't want anything else. So I have the stop button, which is extremely important because right now, with the system that we're using, with the systems we are using on a daily basis, we don't have the stop button.
No, we've no idea, have we, what's going on with our data.
And this is a problem. It's not just the digital data. You're moving closer to physical data, biological, wearables, all these systems that we're performing, these bionic arms and things that you can use if you have problems, or if you have, you've amputated an arm, for example, you have a bionic arm that can help you get a normal, regular life. But then there's always the concern, what if somebody gets access to that biological data that I'm putting in this bionic arm? What happens next?
Yeah, it's really scary, the idea of all sort of Internet of Things devices potentially being vulnerable to hacking, from self-driving cars to pacemakers to robot arms. The abuse potential is quite staggering. So if the blockchain can help secure that information, but also make it completely evident who's accessed it and exactly how, make that traceable. Because I think what happens now is we give away our data too lightly. I know that, I'm fascinated by big data, and I always have been. I know I'm on one of those DNA databases because I paid for the privilege of spitting in a test tube some years ago out of curiosity. And I scrolled through the small print of what they were going to do with it, and I know that they've monetized that data many, many times over, and hopefully some of it has been for medical research projects, which I would be glad to support. But I know I've had no involvement or consent in that. I've just signed that away. I won't get it back either. Whereas what I would love to be able to do is unlock that data, say, to my osteopath or somebody else who might actually be able to use it for my benefit directly.
Exactly. And I think the way I see it is blockchain as the foundation on which you can build. And then you have a layer of also of smart contracts, because the whole automation, so you don't have to read long boring contracts. You can just have it automized for you. And there's the AI layer, or the deep learning. It's actually not AI, it's deep learning, but you have the deep learning and machine learning layer, which helps you digest the information that you're being sent or forced to read, like terms of services. Nobody reads the TOS.
No,
Nobody
I
has
don't
time
read
to
it.
read.
You don't read it. We're professionals in this space.
Yeah.
Nobody
It's
else
like
is going to.
40, 50 pages of stuff. And The problem is they don't have highlights with this is the section this is the generic stuff, and this is the section that you should read. But then you can train a machine to differentiate between the generic and the customized layers that should be analyzed. And then the machine can send you a highlight and say, yes, these sections should be read carefully.
This is the thing that matters here.
Yeah, exactly. Have someone do this for you, and have a machine do it for you, because it's cost effective and productive.
That makes total sense to me, because it just seems to me that we've reached a point where those terms of service are never going to be read. The complexity that they have to comply with everything, it just makes them less and less accessible. So that's definitely, it's this convergence of all the different technology that's so exciting, I think. And putting that on top of the blockchain layer for the transparency, that's going to make such an amazing difference. So it's really exciting. But before we get too carried away with the excitement, are there any risks in putting healthcare data and this kind of personal data on the blockchain?
There are risks, not necessarily given the blockchain protocol or the mechanism used, but there are risks in terms of the security of the application you put on top of the blockchain, because blockchain as a technology is pretty much attack resistant, and if it has a lot of users, fueling, like, that's why the mechanisms are important. If it has people mining or staking, and a lot of community support, it becomes pretty much unhackable. But the problem is what you're building on top of it always has cybersecurity issues.
Yes.
So this is one of the things that I always address, the importance of testing and regularly testing your platforms, your apps, your devices, and anything you build on top of a blockchain interface. Testing it with ethical hackers, testing it with cybersecurity experts on a regular basis, like at least every 2-3 months, and training the internal teams, your company employees, training them on what kind of threats there are, because every single day another virus comes out, another digital worm, another ransomware discussion appears in some part of the globe. So you're really exposed to this, and we need to understand exactly and be ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's an arms race, isn't it? To try and just stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
Exactly.
I think that's really interesting, because I do think there's a danger that people thinking, oh, I work in blockchain, so that's completely safe. And it can actually make people take their eye off the ball of the security point of view, because as you say, it's the second layer, the application layer, where you can be vulnerable.
Exactly. It should be, at least it should be common knowledge that when you have the foundation will still be there after a huge earthquake. But what's built on top of the foundation will crumble if it's not aligned, and if it's not thought and, like, really constructed with mechanisms in mind that would protect it from crumbling.
Yeah.
So that's why there's a second layer it's the architecture of the application or the solution that you're building on top of the blockchain architecture.
I suppose that goes to show why there are so many interesting career paths within the blockchain industry, because there are people who have to address all these different aspects, everything from the social impact through to the anti-malware and penetration testing and all the things that go along with it. It's not just blockchain developers that we need more of, right?
Yeah, exactly. We need also people in security, a lot of people in cybersecurity. We need people to test, so ethical hackers. We need also people who are knowledgeable about regulations and compliance. And it's very interesting. I'll actually have Vlad Zamfir talk about crypto law and governance mechanisms. in a future episode on the podcast, because I think it's also important. How do you determine the implication of your community into the technological aspects of the infrastructure you're building, not just the practical aspects
Yes.
where the community member is also a user and a customer and a buyer, a consumer of your technology, but they should also be involved to some degree based on their knowledge and wish to get involved into the architecture
Yeah.
part.
Well, just that
Again, based
blurring of roles is really interesting about this space, isn't it? That somebody can be a user of a blockchain, but they could also be a miner or a staker or a
yeah,
consumer and wear different hats. Well, I know you like to wear lots of different hats when anyone's seen you speak publicly. You know what I'm talking about. But we'll look forward to that one. That's on the Cryptolaw podcast. Is that right? That interview?
yeah.
Because we'll put a link to that. That would be great. So I think it's a really important question that we talk about security and blockchain, because a lot of the time in popular media, the way things get reported, it sounds as though there are issues with the blockchain technology itself. For example, when yet another exchange hack takes place. But quite often, well, in every case, it's a different layer that's vulnerable. I mean, it sounds like in the case of the most recent one, the Canadian exchange, they're talking about it simply being a human layer of somebody losing keys or somebody dying without a succession plan for access to data. Whether there turns out to be more to that story or not, we don't know yet. But it just goes to show that there are as many off-chain risks which are still there, and no technology is going to take that away.
Yes, and just consider, for example, Ethereum. There were a lot of issues with the smart contracts on Ethereum, just because it is a second layer. So bugs can take place, and this is interesting actually with smart contracts. If they're on chain, you can't really take them off chain and fix them. You have to completely change them. But if they're off chain, then fixing them is easier.
Yes.
And here's a component of it's something I've been trying to do with one of the companies I advised for a year, to try to build an educational system that teaches lawyer how to code.
Right.
So then you have the legal side, but you also have the coder side,
Yeah.
and you know combining the two would be a force.
Wouldn't it
Uh,
just? Because there's such different worlds, and in coding, everything is black or white, on or off, right or wrong. And yet, law is subject to this continual interpretation and case law and precedent and all this woolly stuff that's really hard to reconcile the two. And maybe the word smart contracts was badly chosen in the first place. I think it implies something to do with contract law, which is actually completely different, whether you're talking about something on or off a blockchain.
well, smart contracts have always had a legal component to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the term smart was more related to the fact that it was automated and it could be coded from the beginning and moved. So it moves with the along the blockchain.
Yeah.
It flows. So this means that it's versatile and um, it's immutable, and it can enable transactions in a more simplified, automatic way. And it enables people to trust each other even if they don't know each other, which
That's
is
the most
great.
exciting thing, isn't it? This idea that we're not dependent on trust anymore. We can actually observe things directly, prove them.
Exactly.
Um,
If it's to talk about the future, actually, you know, maybe it's already happening at a smaller scale. Maybe we're not there yet, but I really see a future in which, I can trade contracts with another company and just put insert a number like 1 or 2, which is coded for a specific action, and then I can sell the company to another company, or
mm,
sell the kind of solution to someone else. I don't have to go through all the tiring paperwork and all the legal aspects, because everything would be automated. So it just takes me 1 second if I want to give you my company, and you can take it and it's compliant, and
and we just
everybody knows
exchange
about it.
keys and it's done.
Yeah,
Just
exactly,
imagine.
exactly.
What
That
will the
is,
lawyers do then?
well, the lawyers need to ensure that everything that is coded in that smart contract um, is okay, is legally
Mm.
compliant, that is in strict, like it's a reality also for the users involved. So they would have to just verify. You
Okay.
can you
So there'll
can
still
use
be
them.
some work for the lawyers for the
Yeah,
off-chain
yeah,
due diligence associated with that contract. But we'll
yeah.
be able to
I
do the
think
deal just by an exchange of keys. That sounds fantastic. And when you think at the moment, often that depends on somebody getting a pen and making a squiggle on a bit of paper for that final
yeah,
transaction. That seems incredibly archaic and weird.
and you have to consider if you want to sell a company and it's bankrupt, and then there's all this mess that you have to dig up. Whenever the process of doing due diligence, this is insane. The amount of hours you have to spend and money to figure out if a company is legit or an
Mm,
asset is legit, and that's why this whole idea of tokenization, even with like real estate, for example, would be done much easier. I think it's approached in the wrong way. For the moment, I think it's oversimplified for what we currently have. But imagine if multiple institutions of the state would use blockchain as a ledger just to store the information they have and make it publicly available, then it would be just a matter of having cross chains communicate between each other so that when I'm talking to you and you say, yeah, I'm interested in buying your business, you don't have to spend, I don't know, a couple of months understanding everything, all the backdoor stuff, all the
mm.
dirty stuff, because you already have access to it. You have the machine stuff, that the machine part that analyzes the the kind of information that comes in and verifies if it's a risk or not. And then, with crypto or not crypto, we could just have a very fast exchange of money or of products. Let's say I sell your
Yeah.
company for your company, and that's it.
We
It'll
just
be
wait
so
for a couple
simplified.
confirmations and it's done.
Exactly.
It'd be
Exactly.
amazing.
30 bucks, 30 confirmations, 30 bucks confirmation,
Sounds
and it's done.
reasonable. It's one thing that's I've often thought about because I live in Spain and in the area where we are, which is just near the coast, there have been lots and lots of problems with disputed land registry and people buying plots or buying buildings which don't have any existence in law or they're not where the notary thinks they're located and the contracts have got confused over the years. And all that data exists in offices and town halls all over the country. But if that land registry could just be put on a blockchain, then everybody could
Yeah.
actually see what they were buying and verify in law that the property they thought they were purchasing is where the plans say it is.
The
Um, uh,
problem with
Sorry,
the
go ahead.
problem with archives is, one, they're either stored in a physical form, as
Mm,
in paper, especially the old ones. Then, secondly, if they're not stored in physical form, they are stored online, but on computers and servers that don't have necessarily a backup. So,
mm,
if the computer fails and malfunctions, and it's also because it's data, because it's, you have it in all these compressed versions, they can easily become victims of viruses and all
mm-hmm.
these attacks that you get on a regular basis from the web. So then the safest option would be to have them on a blockchain that is kept alive by the people that are using it. So you
Mm.
have people staking, institutions, companies having a stake in the blockchain governance, and this is being basically empowered by the people.
That sounds like a really democratic and transparent and accessible way of doing things. And it ties in with so much existing law now about data portability and compatibility and having to actually store things in a way where people can get their data deleted from a Facebook account to come full circle or find out what their credit reference says about them or their medical reports and so on. I think we're going to have to see more convergence and more openness. Are you optimistic about the future, Roxana? Do you think we're moving towards the right way of doing data?
That's a good question. Um, I'm a realist,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand. I've studied 5 years of psychology, so I understand a bit the human behavior
Mm.
and how people react and what fuels the primitive sides of us as human beings. I think we are increasingly having more thought leaders, and not just thought leaders, but action leaders that identify, what isn't working, and they're really, really trying to make a difference.
Mm.
And I understand this better than anyone. I spent 6 years training over 6,000 people on how to make a shift in their lives because they had crappy jobs and they were not
Mm-hmm.
happy. And I told them, you could be on your own 2 feet. You can go and look for clients for yourselves. You can start freelancing. You can build a business from that. If you want more, not necessarily more money to start with, but more freedom
Mm.
or more control over your time. So I know it's possible. It's not easy, but trust me when I say, when you realize that you're making an impact in someone's lives, in people's lives, you realize that you're already one step ahead, that we're already in a better world tomorrow if tomorrow one people out of 1,000 or one people out of 1,000,000 start thinking and start implementing the things that we talk about.
Sounds
So
good. It's one step at a time, isn't it?
I'm positive about the younger generations that are coming, and I'm positive about the need for change, which is becoming painful.
Mm.
And I think we're in an era of technology and technological boom. So we have all the right, uh, all the right factors in place. We just need to build and allow people the space to use it.
That sounds like a positive point to end up on then. There is optimism for
Yeah,
the future. There's a long way to go, but one person at a time, one project at a time, one thought process at a time, we're hopefully moving towards that more transparent, accountable, and fair ethical future that we hope for all our data. It's been really fascinating, this discussion. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Roxana, what's the best way for people to keep in touch with you? Where can they find you online? We'll put all this in the show notes, but in case anyone's listening or driving or something, how can they connect with you?
yeah, sure. I'm everywhere on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Twitter account. I sometimes write on Medium. I'm on Telegram. I'm very active on Telegram. So
That's where we
I'm
met.
basically just one exactly. I just
Those links together in the notes because I think a lot of people would be very interested to follow your writing and your projects, and keep an eye on all of these important issues together because we are a community, we are accountable to each other, and it's going to be what we make it. I think that's the most
I
exciting
agree.
thing.
I agree. On a positive side, this is something I really want to share with
Mm.
everyone. But I recently became a member of the European AI Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see and connect with people that are looking to use machine learning and deep learning for their projects in Europe and beyond. And
Fantastic.
I'm a partner in crime, so to speak, with the World Ethical Data Forum. So these will be a series of events that will happen in October in Hong Kong, in March 2020 in London.
Mm-hmm.
And before they happen, I'll be creating a lot of content, on YouTube and on social media, just to educate people and spread the knowledge and make them more aware of ethical data and where we're
Fantastic.
standing, how we could improve the space.
Brilliant. Well, we'll look forward to sharing all of that information on the CryptoConf pod and on the Block Sparks links because This is so important, everyone. This is your data. It's your personal information. It's your content. It could be your very DNA. So I think everybody needs to take personal responsibility and stay educated as we hold the institutions and data processors to account. This has been a fascinating journey, Roxana. Thank you very much for joining us on the Crypto Confidence podcast.
Thank you for having me, Maya. And I wish everyone a good day and stay inspired.
K stands for KYC, which is Know Your Customer. This acronym, KYC, refers to a range of different laws in different parts of the world, but they're all aimed at requiring businesses, particularly financial ones, to know exactly who they are doing business with. It's part of the Anti-Money Laundering Initiative, much of which stemmed from the US Patriot Act in 2001, which was determined to clamp down on the generation of income through illegal activities and to obstruct activities like terrorist financing, securities fraud, and market manipulation. You may have encountered KYC when setting up a bank account, or as an additional security layer for an established account, in which you were required to send copies of your primary ID, or perhaps have this verified online via a webcam. For larger amounts, bigger transactions, greater knowledge of the customer is needed to comply, and this is sometimes referred to as enhanced due diligence. Cryptocurrency exchanges are no different. If they're holding other people's money, then they need to be able to account to regulators as to whence this came. Much depends, of course, on where the exchange is regulated, which depends on where it's located. The Money Laundering Regulations 2017 are the underlying rules which govern KYC in the UK. Many UK businesses use the guidance provided by the European Joint Money Laundering Steering Group, along with the Financial Conduct Authority's publication Financial Crime: A Guide for Firms, as an aid to designing effective compliance procedures. But cryptocurrency exchanges are sometimes located in remote jurisdictions, and understandably it raises concerns for many people, the idea of sending copies of highly sensitive documents to areas with very different privacy legislation to that which we might be used to. Recent reports of hacks of KYC data from major exchanges, including Binance, appear to have turned out to be false, but it caused a great deal of worry. We need to be able to trust these institutions not just with our crypto, but also with copies of things like our passports and birth certificates, which are highly sensitive and potentially very damaging if they fell into the wrong hands. That therefore means that there is a considerable black market demand for data sets which contain these documents. Also, many people would argue that it's completely contrary to the original ideals of cryptocurrency in any case, this whole KYC thing, that anyone should need to know who is transacting. We need to remember that the cost of adoption is inevitably compliance. Regulation is needed for crypto market integrity, as it will dramatically decrease fraud and scams and increase the reputation of the crypto ecosystem, which will in turn ensure market growth. Some platforms, like Shapeshift, resisted as long as possible, but they were forced to implement KYC last year in order to keep trading, despite the friction it introduced for users who were used to just sending one currency and receiving another in as little time as it took for the transactions to confirm on the respective blockchains. And of course, it introduces costs as well for the organizations needing to comply, simply to verify all of these documents. It's estimated that complying with KYC and AML procedures cost the banking industry alone over $500 million per year. I wasn't able to find up-to-date data for cryptocurrency specifically. Of course, it's only institutions like exchanges which have to comply, and it's worth remembering that the original Bitcoin white paper said nothing about centralized exchanges or KYC. If you're trading peer-to-peer, then the terms of the deal are set between the two peers, and they need not require even disclosure of each person's name, never mind their birth certificate or blood group. Peer-to-peer exchanges like Local CoinSwap, who we interviewed recently, they don't KYC their users because they don't take custody of their users' funds. They merely connect two people doing a deal directly through their platform. Anybody using their platform is welcome to require whatever procedures or verification they want in order to feel comfortable with the transaction they're taking part in. But it's considered the business of those two parties rather than any centralized place where that information and identity document would be gathered. So, you need to know your customer in order to be in control of your own identity and the level of disclosure you're comfortable with, in exchange for your cryptocurrency and other financial transactions. Thanks for listening to Crypto Confidence. If you like what you hear, please do consider leaving us a review via your favourite podcasting app and joining the conversation online in whichever way you prefer. Full contact details are in the show notes for this episode. And remember, nothing in this podcast or our related social media, nor anything else published by BlockSparks OU at any location, is intended as financial, investment or trading advice. Everything we write or say represents our personal opinions for your information, education and entertainment only. You should not make any decisions based on anything we share with you, not without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with appropriate professional advisors. Crypto Confidence is all about being smart and informed and making the right choices for you.